Hello and welcome to a TSCAD development update. Today we're going to be taking a look at something that railroads love to hate or hate to love, or at least the road crews I suspect, and that's maintenance of way, specifically around track and time since we're dealing with the CTC territory. And we're here on the BNSF Mojave sub, BNSF Dispatcher Desk 113. And we have a couple of trains. We've got two westbounds. If we switch to our symbol view here, we got a grain train between Hinckley and Jim Gray. We've got a Z train coming east up at Sanborn, and we've got a manifest, Barstow, Pasco, ready to go coming out of the yard, who's waiting for a signal at Hut. So we'll zoom in a little bit here, and the first thing that we're going to go ahead and do is go into our fast route mode, and we're going to get that grain train moving all the way down and into the siding at Boron with a fast route, and keep that Z train moving as well onto the main at Boron for the meet. And we're going to wait for this to set up, and we're going to switch over to our stack mode with Control W. As soon as this meet is complete, we're going to go ahead and stack the route for both of the trains as we saw in the last video. And we're also going to anticipate that this Barstow to Pasco is going to go into the hole at Jim Gray to meet the Z train as well. So we're going to go ahead and stack a signal into the siding at Jim Gray at the east switch. And we're going to go ahead and set up a signal at West Hinckley. Now in this particular example, we're going to say that we got a call come in from Foreman Smith. He's going to be a track foreman who's looking to set on at Hinckley and head west to check out the track. And of course, we just released our manifest coming out from the yard to head toward Hinckley. But we are going to go ahead and let the maintainer get some track and time in the siding at Hinckley and get the maintainer the ability to set on. So first thing we're going to do here is our new menu, which is F5, and you'll see our cursor changes to say TNT for track and time. And we're going to start by giving some track and time on the siding. So we're going to go ahead and click twice on the siding itself. That's going to bring up our track and time dialog, and you're going to see the siding there at Hinckley flashing blue, indicating that we're working on track and time. So we're going to go ahead and put in Foreman Smith's name, and we don't need the siding at Hinckley anytime in the immediate future, so we're going to go ahead and move the until time, the time when the maintainer needs to be clear, Foreman Smith, for 1600. And we're going to go ahead and hit read, and we're going to get the same read and repeat dialog we saw for flagging a train. And after we read the instructions to Foreman Smith, we'd click repeat to make sure it was read back correctly. So Foreman Smith track and time 1003, granted on the siding track between West Hinckley switch no and East Hinckley switch no until 1600. We would say that that's okayed, and it's okay at 1018, dispatcher ABC. Click OK on that, and we see that the siding at Hinckley goes to a solid blue. We can mouse over the track and time to get more information. We can see the track and time number, who has the track and time, and the until time, 1600. And now we're going to go ahead and give a little more track and time so that Foreman Smith can set on at the east switch, because the grade crossing is in between the signals at East Hinckley. And if we actually turn on our Run 8 view here on our video, we'll see the grade crossing that we're talking about. So we're going to go ahead and once again, we're going to hit F5 and double click this time on that east switch at Hinckley. And this is going to be for Foreman Smith. And this time we're going to just give them until 10:30. It's 10:19 right now. We're going to go till 10:30. We don't want to hold up that westbound for too terribly long. So we'll go ahead and read just as we did before and repeat as we did before. And this time it's between the eastbound control signal and the westbound control signal at East Hinckley until 10:30. We click OK, and we see it's been okayed at 10:19. And we've now got track and time at that east switch of Hinckley. We're also going to go ahead and we're going to reverse the switch. That way the maintainer can set on the track, Foreman Smith. And this time when we go to throw the switch, instead of just immediately throwing, we are going to get a prompt to make sure that men and equipment are clear of the switch, so we don't throw the switch underneath a high rail vehicle that may not have occupancy indication. So we'll go ahead and say yes and allow that turnout to throw. And as we do that, we're going to go ahead and pop over here. We'll show our display again, and okay, there we go. It has been thrown. So we'll go ahead and in run 8, we will get our high rail vehicle and we will set on the track. And let's start our engine, release, and we'll go ahead and hop into the seat here and press the gas, and we'll start pulling into the siding. And as soon as we get into the clear here, if we switch back over, we will see that we now have a magenta color on the siding that represents our high rail vehicle, and we now have the unoccupied east switch there at Hinckley. Magenta color indicates track and time as well as an occupancy. So we know we've got our guy on the siding there as he's moving into the clear. We're also going to go ahead and just set up a stack across that east switch at Hinckley as well. That way, as soon as we do report clear, we will get our westbound the ability to keep on rolling. And at this point, since we are in the clear, now the track maintainer, Foreman Smith, would tone up the dispatcher and indicate that he's in the clear. And in order to release that track and time at the switch, the dispatcher could right-click on the switch and come down to track and time report clear, and you'll see the track and time that's in effect for that block, or the dispatcher can just hit F6. And if Foreman Smith is calling in, and we'd see calling in with track and time 1004, you can select it from the drop-down, or the dispatcher can type it in. 1004, and we just verify the limits there and that it's Foreman Smith that's releasing at 1022, and we'll say OK. And we'll just get a quick read back here. Foreman Smith is reporting clear on authority 1004 between eastbound control signal East Hinckley switch yes and westbound control signal East Hinckley switch yes at 1022. And is that correct? And Foreman Smith says that is correct, so we say yes. And that track and time has now been released just ahead of our westbound manifest, and that stack is going to take effect. And it's going to align for the main here. And we're going to now wait for our manifest to make its way over here to Hinckley. And so we will wait just a second for that to happen. All right, we have made it down to the west end of Hinckley, and we'll hop out of our high railer here and walk over and get ready to do a roll by of our westbound, which as we pull up the display, we can see is now in between the switches, making its way west. And in fact, while we wait for him to show up, we're actually going to pop over here again, and we're going to have another track foreman here. We're going to have Foreman Jones, who's also looking to get some track and time. And Foreman Jones is going to set on down here on main 3 and is going to be heading up toward Hut. So those are the limits that Foreman Jones is requesting. So we click on the start and the end of the limits. And we see, of course, it flashes blue. And we have got Foreman Jones requesting this track and time. And we'll say that we have until 11:15. We'll see 7:11. Excuse me. We'll say 11:30 for Foreman Jones. And when we get this, we get a little bit more that we got to read back here, and that's because the name of the track changes, and that's very important. As you see, Foreman Jones is starting at main 3, and then as we go through the West D yard, it turns to main 1, and then when we head up here toward Hut, it turns to the Mojave main. So the track and time goes as track and time number 1007, granted on, for Foreman Jones, granted on main 3 track between East D yard switch no, and eastbound control signal West D yard switch yes, and on main 1 track between West D yard switch no and eastbound control signal Valley Junction switch yes, and on main track between Valley Junction switch no and Hut switch no until 11:30. We'll go ahead and OK that. And Foreman Jones has some track and time now. We can highlight anywhere over there and we can see that Foreman Jones has set on. And while Foreman Jones is set on now, we see that we are getting our train rolling by here on the main at Hinckley. And Foreman Smith is performing the roll by. And as soon as this train clears that west switch, then Foreman Smith is going to tone up the dispatcher and is going to request some additional track and time to start patrolling behind our westbound freight. And it looks like our westbound freight is getting close to being in the clear. Our next westbound there, the grain train, just cleared that east switch at Jim Gray, so our manifest is now aligned into the siding, and here comes the NDPUs, and Foreman Smith watched the train go by, and all right, it was a good roll by, fantastic. So we'll go ahead and hop back into the truck here, and we're going to be requesting some new track and time. So Foreman Smith now would tone up the dispatcher and request the track and time going west out of Hinckley. So the dispatcher is going to come in here with track and time now and start from the west switch of Hinckley, and it's going to head all the way over there to the east switch of Jim Gray. And you will now notice that when our dialog opens, we have a behind train selection. That BNSF 7859 West, which is the train that just came by, is going to appear, and we can't remove it. If we were to try to double click this to remove it, it's not going to allow us to remove it because the limits have to be behind that train. So we're going to go ahead and again issue this to Foreman Smith. And we know we've got that eastbound Z train coming, so we're only going to give 30 minutes for this particular track and time. So we're going to give until 11 o'clock. And we'll go ahead and read the authority. But first, the system is going to make darn sure that Foreman Smith is not going to pull out in front of our westbound freight. So it's going to ask, are these trains by the location where Foreman Smith will enter the track, BNSF 7859 West? So this would be the dispatcher talking to Foreman Smith. Has the BNSF 7859 West passed your location? And assuming Foreman Smith confirms yes, then the dispatcher would go ahead and hit yes in order to read the track and time. And we'll just go straight to repeat, but it's track and time 1008 behind the BNSF 7859 West, granted on main track between westbound control signal West Hinckley switch yes and East Jim Gray switch no until 1100. And we'll go ahead and OK that at 1033 dispatcher ABC. We'll now notice that the green alignment for the train still appears. The train itself is going to appear in magenta now because it's technically within track and time limits, although it's not directly affected by the track and time because it has the route aligned. So it's going to go ahead and continue toward the siding. I can now go ahead and reverse the switch. Of course, it's going to ask to make sure that men and equipment are clear, and yes, indeed they are. So now the switch is going to throw, and as it does, Foreman Smith will be able to go ahead and continue on out onto the track behind our westbound. And onto the track we go in order to do our patrolling. All right, that's no problem. But now, as you recall, we have Foreman Jones back here. Foreman Jones has been making his way west as well. And Foreman Jones actually also wants to continue all the way from Hutt also to East Jim Gray. So when we go in here to set up our track and time, starting down here at Hutt and going out here to Jim Gray, we're actually going to get an error. And we're going to notice here that Foreman Smith has sole authority in these limits. When we set up Foreman Smith's track and time, we did not set up his track and time as being joint. So no other authority can be granted to any other maintenance of way within those limits. So in order to rectify that, we're going to have to modify our track and time for Foreman Smith. If we do a mouse over incidentally, we still can see our train information, and we can see that we've got Foreman Smith's track and time in here. So anywhere in here, we can just do a right click on this, and we can go down here to track and time modify. And we're going to modify Foreman Smith's track and time. Going to click on that. It's going to bring the track and time dialog open again, except now there's a few fields that are missing, such as who it's assigned to. This has already been assigned to Foreman Smith. We can't change that. We can't change the trains that it's behind. Those have already been set. But one thing we could do would be change the until time. We could add some time if need be, for example, and maybe we know the Z train is going to be going slow enough that we could give an extra 15 minutes. Now that's probably not the case here, as the Z train's at Silt already, but for the case of this demo, we'll go ahead and add 15 minutes, and we're going to make Foreman Smith's track and time authority joint, and we're going to apply those changes. So now we've talked to Foreman Smith, and Foreman Smith is aware that his authority is now joint, meaning other maintenance of way can join him. So now when we go down here, back to Foreman Jones, and we try to get Foreman Jones some track and time again from Hut heading west, now it's going to allow us. And now we're going to go ahead and assign this to Foreman Jones. And we're going to go ahead and give Foreman Jones to 11:15 to be in the clear as well. But you'll notice that Foreman Jones authority has to be joint, and we can't uncheck the make joint authority. That's because the system knows it's going to have to be joint with Foreman Smith out there on that main track. So we'll go ahead and read this, and of course it's going to go ahead and ask whether or not the train is in the clear. Now in the future I will probably take care of this maintenance of way, since that's not technically something that Foreman Jones would be following. That should only apply to trains. So in a future update that'll be removed, but it is still the 7859 West, so Foreman Jones will confirm that is the case. And we'll get our track and time as well. Track and time 1010, and we'll just in this case skip and say behind the BNSF 7859 West, granted on main track, between westbound control signal Hut switch yes and east Jim Gray switch no, joint with Foreman Smith until 11:15. And we'll go ahead and click OK, and now that's been okayed. And we now have a lot of track and time. As we zoom back out here a little bit, we've got track and time that spans all the way from the east D yard heading up here to east Jim Gray. We'll set up a signal at west Jim Gray to keep our Z train running, and we can also set up a stacked route here for the Z train to continue heading east as soon as our westbound is in the clear in the siding at Jim Gray, and as soon as all of our track and time high railers and whatnot have also gotten into the clear. And so we'll go ahead and slow our guy down here to a stop. And for the sake again of the demo, we'll just say that good old Foreman Smith here came up to a grade crossing and went ahead and set off the track like so. And we get our occupancy, which has now disappeared, and we'll say, okay, Foreman Smith is done. Foreman Smith is going to go ahead and is going to report clear of his track and time. So we'll go ahead and report that clear at 10:38, and we'll say okay, and we'll confirm that that is correct. Reporting clear 1008 between westbound control signal west Hinckley switch yes and east Jim Gray switch no. That's been released. Now, of course, we still see that track and time because Foreman Jones still has track and time. But Foreman Smith will go ahead and report clear of the siding at Hinckley. So we'll go ahead and report that clear. And now, of course, we see the siding go back to white because there is no track and time on there anymore. And now perhaps Foreman Jones has made his way clear of the track down here, 1007. So we'll verify that. And we'll make sure that it is between East D Yard switch no and Hut switch no at 1039. And yes, that's correct. And so that disappears. And then lastly, as soon as Foreman Jones gets in the clear of this last bit of track and time, 1010 between Hut switch yes and Jim Gray switch no at 1140, we'll release that as well. And that is correct. And now all of our track and time is clear. So our maintenance is in the clear now, and our trains can keep on rolling, and we'll get everybody off the track in order to get that Z train through. Got a couple of stacked routes set up here, ready to keep our trains moving. So that is our update for today. I hope you have enjoyed checking out Maintenance Away, something that I think anybody that is looking forward to dispatching and enjoys some of the challenges of dispatching is going to enjoy being able to incorporate in a bit of a more realistic manner into Run 8 when dispatching using TSCAD. So once again, thank you, and have a wonderful day or night, depending on where you are, and take care.